Welcome to Apostates on the Fringe, a political podcast brought to you by the Atheist Society of Knoxville. Today, I'm with my co-hosts,
Alistair.
And I'm Dustin.
And I'm Sam.
And that was dreamy, sir.
I'm working on my NPR podcast voice.
I like it.
I think it's going pretty well.
I was getting a little turned on over here. I'm not gonna
Yeah,
lie.
that's what I was thinking.
Like I was nursing a
roused.
chubber over here.
I'm thinking that we're really, need to grab onto the ASMR.
The ASMR. Oh, I
Yeah.
like it. Oh yeah, we're gonna get that on. I'm gonna put it on YouTube. And I'll put some nice video and graphic behind it while you're doing that.
Yeah, along with the vaping sounds. I
I will try to edit those out, but Al has this terrible habit of like being loud as fuck with it. You're a dick, and I'm leaving that in.
I'm glad we can laugh because this is another week of horror.
This is a shit show. So let's talk about what we're drinking. Sam, what do you got?
I'm drinking same thing I was last week. Eye of the Beholden by Orpheus Brewing in collaboration with Zoll, and I'm actually really whoring them out tonight because I went to their brewery last night and got this awesome T-shirt.
That shirt is horrifying.
Yes, it's from an '80s B movie that I really loved as a child.
Do you know what that looks like? It looks like a horrified version of the Goomba from the fucking Super Mario's brother movie.
Okay, I can see that. Yeah, so hit me up, Zoll. Pimping your shit out.
Al, what you got?
I'm drinking, is that Ohm?
It's your shit. I don't know.
Ohm Gang?
Ohm Gang? I don't know. Gang?
Ohm.
Looks
MME
fancy.
Gang. It's Three Philosophers Blueberry Coffee.
Blueberry toffee?
Coffee. Yeah.
Why?
Yeah, I don't know. It's a blend of quadruple ale and Belgian Creek.
I would have
ale.
never like mixed blueberry and coffee.
That's what happens when you
Cherries,
drop
blueberry, and
your
coffee.
breakfast into your coffee.
Yeah.
That's
It's not bad, though.
That's when you're already drunk and have breakfast.
Yeah.
I have the Highland Brewing out of Asheville, North Carolina. It's the Oatmeal Porter. This is smooth with hints of chocolate and freshly roasted coffee.
It's a classic. Huh?
It's a classic. It's the aftertaste that I really enjoy on this one.
Always
It's
enjoyed
very
that
smooth.
one. I think it was one of the first darker beers I ever got into.
Again, I was just limited. I'm not traveling a lot, and I'm not near the beer market that you all have this amazing access to. So,
These fancy beers that will make me completely wasted by the end of the show.
because that's a 10 point. What is
yeah, this is over 10%.
Mine's 9.7.
Yeah, so
I'm the
our
puss.
audience might be able to tell
I'm the
where
wuss
the
here.
show goes by the end of it.
This one's only 5.9. I feel like I'm behind right now. That's right. I'll drink more of these to counteract, so we'll be good. And I'll have to
Yeah, we'll see if we have to cut for a bathroom break.
knocked my mic with the beer bottle. That's fun.
That was a cheers to the audience, actually.
Al, you got your second shot today.
I did.
So you'll be soon 2 weeks fully vaccinated. I got mine last Thursday. Absolutely kicked my ass the next day. It was like flu on fast forward. So like I woke up at 7 and I was fucking freezing. Like I just felt so cold. 2 hours later, of course, I popped an ibuprofen and 2 hours later, I'm like, okay, now I'm freaking sweating. And then just, the body aches. But by 4 p.m., I started to feel mostly human.
That's kind of how I felt on my first shot, but we'll see. I have mine next week.
But there was the fatigue. I was definitely tired that day and just couch sat. So I hope you do okay.
So far, I'm feeling okay. My arm hurts a lot less, but I did take Tylenol this time
It
afterwards.
usually takes
so.
a good 12 hours
It-
to kick
That's
in.
what I'm thinking.
It took some time.
Make sure you're off out back at home before
Well,
that fucking kicks
I
your
scheduled myself to work tomorrow, but I can cancel if I need to
Yeah.
and without any issues. So I'm tentatively going to stay home tomorrow. We'll see.
That's what I was like. I will take the day off maybe if it happens. And then the morning I woke up, I'm like, I'm definitely not fucking going in.
Yeah, this is ACAB All of the week.
So a lot of stuff we're going to talk about today. Continued fuckery from the police.
Yeah.
Like it wasn't really our goal to make this. I know you said this earlier, to make this an anti-cop show like all the time, but
Kind of was. Like, we
it was
going
going
about
to be
cops.
it was going to be a segment
That's
each week.
One of the arguments we get in, like, I think one of the reasons we started this show is to differentiate leftism from liberalism, and that is something that we do get into fights with. Our liberal side of our friends is the cop argument. Like I was explaining to someone, a friend last night, I'm like, liberals will be like, defund the police, and leftists will be like, abolish the police.
Right.
So
It's not all cops.
Well, and
You
a
bad
lot of
apples.
liberals won't even get on the argument of defunding the police.
that's also
You
true.
know?
Yeah, like our mayor.
All right.
So I will
Speaking
say
of-
I wasn't as anti as I am now. It happened last year with immediately after George Floyd, not only that incident, but then the nationwide protest, and then all the fuckery from the police that were like assaulting protesters. Like just my anger meter just kept growing and growing. I was like, fuck 12.
Yeah.
I can't think of a time when I wouldn't have said "fuck the police"
No,
in my life.
it's
you
so
know?
much that I wasn't as like I was like, man, fuck cops. Like I was just more like indifferent. Like when we went to the Pride Parade and you had that sign that said, you know, cops, I record. You had the shirt that said cops, I record everything, and then you said warning, police in the area. I was like, eh. But now I'm like, let's have 5 of those signs. You
Yeah.
know,
That's still on my wall at home.
is it?
I think there's a meme that's like, you know, when you're a teenager and you're rebellious, you're like, fuck the cops. And you get a little older, you're like, was that rebellion? Should I say fuck the cops? And then you're like, wait a second. No, fuck the cops.
So Al, we got a lot of pressure to the DAG, even the media outlets. I think what that bullshit that nothing really happened until all the media outlets joined
That's
in.
normal, yeah.
Yeah.
So why don't you tell us about that?
Well, what happened is, like, all our major news agencies around here, and the smaller news agencies, all teamed up together for a lawsuit against Sharm Allen.
Because they denied the FOIA request.
Yeah, the Freedom of Information Act. They had put in the request for that. She denied it outright, I guess they did, and so they sued her. And apparently, a judge ordered the release of the body cam footage. So
And
you know, if there were all these legal reasons why she couldn't before, why would a judge say no? You need to release that shit?
And before we get into the substance of that, they did exactly what we said they could have done, which is blur the students' faces.
Yeah.
Anyone that were walking by. Of course, that wasn't a fucking issue. But before, I want to make fun of the whole presentation.
Oh, God.
Because no one knew how to work the fucking PowerPoint.
That-
It was
what happens when you have
embarrassing.
boomers trying
Like,
to
they
handle
didn't know how
technology.
to full screen that shit. They didn't know how to. They weren't like clicking next slide. She's like, "Hey, let's see the back of the vest." They didn't know how to click next slide. Like the dude, they'd never seen PowerPoint before. I'm pretty sure.
People probably don't know the difference between the right and the left button on the mouse, and yet, you know, they're out there supposed to be like doing legal shit. Like,
By the way, we are referring to the killing, murder of Anthony Thompson Jr. at Austin East that we discussed on episode 11.
Yeah, we've got a lot to update from that.
Yeah,
a
so
little
continue.
more clarification.
Continue, Al.
what's happened? We discussed last week about the cop story, and we discussed rumors going around in the community, what they were saying. Well, after we recorded last week, it was like a day or two later, the Anthony's girlfriend's mom did an interview with Knox News Sentinel, I believe it was, and she claimed that she was actually the one to call. She kept saying there is no stepdad. I still don't fully buy that, because she actually never said there is no stepdad. She says, I'm not married, and I've known enough women whose kids refer to their partner as their step-parent, even if they're not
Yeah, I'm
married.
sure
So
she's
the
dating.
specification of I'm not married makes me think there was somebody there. But she claimed that Anthony was abusive to his girlfriend, and she called the police because they had gotten in a physical fight that day at school. Then we had a few days of no real new information coming, and yesterday we had the press conference with the DA where she did release the body cam footage, and there were elements of the rumor from that we heard last week that were true. The only real substitution there was it wasn't the stepdad, it was the mom who called. And we ready to discuss what was on that body cam footage?
We are, but I just as a side note, I saw this cat. I didn't realize it. I didn't know that was him. He did work at that location of one of my locations as at the Walmart, and so
One of the cops?
no, I'm
No,
talking about the Anthony.
Oh, really? Oh.
Yeah, and so I was talking to some of the employees today about him that knew him, and they repeated some of those the story of the there's also maybe an uncle and not stepdad. I don't know.
There was a male figure that was
feeling
and we didn't see all. Like, there was some text dump that they showed during the press conference. We didn't see all of it. I think it's very possible that there was a male figure in his girlfriend's life who was probably, I don't know. The body cam footage, what we did find out is the kid was right about him leaving through the side door. He did go alone and not with a friend, but that's not to say that that friend didn't direct him on where to go and all that stuff, you know. We saw him pacing around. He was clearly nervous, even before he really knew that the police were around or coming to the school. He's not in class like he should be. He's hanging out in a hallway near a door, and he's like pacing around, calling people, and just like he looks nervous to me.
Before we move on, can we talk about that? Because that means they saw him doing this. Why wasn't he directed to a class?
That's what got me, because it seemed like it was at least an hour. Didn't it? It either started at like 1:19 or 12:19. I can't remember. 12:49 at one point there were video.
But he was also hanging on a stairwell.
Yeah,
or something like that.
It
He
was like
outside
this
of class for a while.
one hallway with a door to the outside. There was a stairwell going upstairs, and then like a hallway going next to the stairwell. And for at least like an hour, this kid is just pacing around, and no teacher, no faculty, nobody went up to him and said, "Hey, dude, what are you doing? Get to class."
Yeah, that kind of boggled me too. Kind of want to bounce real quick to something that really kind of pissed me off when I know we talked about the media response. They kicked off the press conference before they got to the body cam footage, that they didn't even know he had a gun. They were not responding to a gun, and that's all they talked about, and that's all the media knew from the police all last week.
Yeah,
that's kind of fucked. Like,
right.
But I just found it interesting that everything that we knew up until the release of that footage was that they were responding to someone that had a gun. They didn't even know.
Yeah.
Okay, but proceed.
So the press conference is switching video between the body cam talking to the girl's mom and her, and security footage from Anthony in school. Eventually, he goes into the bathroom, and apparently this is a bathroom he hung out with for a while. He gets a notification from a friend at school saying 12 is here. Cops are here. Cops do show up. They're like going around the school, walk past the bathroom like once or twice, I believe, and before a like school security officer, not a school resource officer. There's a distinction that they went over in the press interview. They finally go into the bathroom, and this whole thing takes place in like 11 seconds. Mm-hmm. Where the cops go in there, he's sitting on the toilet. They're like talking back and forth. He gets up and he's calm. He's not like resisting. He's not doing anything. He's walking towards them calmly, and they grab him and immediately start wrestling with him. They have no clue what's on this kid's body. What if he even they're supposed to check for pockets and stuff first, because like what if he even had a pair of scissors in his pocket? You know, it didn't have to be a weapon. When typically the procedure is like, I've seen a lot of people arrested. I've been arrested.
Get on the ground and lock your hands on your head.
Put your hands behind your head. If you're standing up, they have you face a wall or the opposite direction of the cops, and they ask, do you have anything in your pockets that we need to know about? Any weapons, sharp objects, or drugs? And this is so, like sharp objects so the cops don't stab themselves. They didn't even attempt this. They immediately started wrestling him. He's yelling at them because he's aware that there's a gun on him, and they're wrestling him for it. And he's like, wait, what are you doing? Wait. And like all of this in 11 seconds, the gun goes off, he gets shot, and the officer gets shot.
I will still, man, because I do want to be honest, they did tell him, they were also telling him to take his hands out of his pockets, but then they did have 2 hands on his right hand from one hand, and then 2 hands on his left hand. And then that's when I saw the gun was visible, they actually had the hands on the gun. Is that correct?
The DA said that they didn't try to get the fingerprints off of the guns because there were so many fingerprints on them, which means all those cops. I mean, even like there was a still frame I saw that was right around the time that the gun went off, and you can see it's still in his pocket. You can see the red from his hoodie like around the gun, which means he didn't even pull it out of his pocket. And you see 2 officers' hands on it as you see his. So there's no telling if he even fired that gun or if an officer accidentally
Which is
pulled
also,
that gun.
by the way, locking his hands to the gun, because if they're grabbing his hand and the gun, he can't let go of it.
Right.
I just want to make that point.
Right.
So the bullet did not hit any of the officers. It apparently hit a trash can. One of them, I guess Wilson was his name.
I'm not clear on the names. I wasn't.
I
paying.
don't care about the
Claybo
cops
is
enough
the
to-
officer that shot him. I know that.
Right. Not only, so he shot him. He fired two shots, and he fell to the ground. And then the officer that was shot was on top of him. And then he randomly shot again.
Yes.
Him in the leg.
Yes.
Well after he was down. So let's talk about what happened after the shot. He's on the ground.
The next thing we see is, him being, he falls on the ground, the cop gets on top of him, handcuffs him, and then it goes over and we see the other kid that was in the bathroom at the time. They're yelling at him to get on the floor. He gets on the floor, they handcuff him. But while
they
they're
followed
trying
procedure
to
to arrest that one.
But no, while they're trying to handcuff him, he's pointing at him. He's like, help him! Help him! Are you going to help him? He is begging and pleading.
He's
They
like, he
get
is
him
bleeding.
handcuffed.
He's bleeding. Help him. I heard that.
They get him handcuffed, and he's like, please help him, please, please. Just begging. And the officer sits on him for over 4 minutes. And they claim that they didn't even know he was hurt. This kid's like begging them and telling him he's bleeding. The officer, once the school nurse finally comes in and starts treating Anthony, the officer goes to the sink and washes the blood off of his hand.
Now, I did hear them calling for a tourniquet, but was that for the officer that was shot in the leg?
That was for the officer shot in the
It
leg.
was very clear they didn't give a shit about this kid.
The
Right.
tourniquet was most definitely for the officer shot in the leg because, like, they say they didn't know he was, like, if he was injured. He was clearly...
He was shot point blank.
Right. He was clearly shot. They knew it was in the chest. A tourniquet's not going to do anything for a chest wound. They were worried about that cop in his leg. And also, these people should be trained in this shit. Why the fuck did you even need to ask if he needs a tourniquet? You don't ask that question. Just put a goddamn tourniquet on him.
I mean, a lot obviously went wrong with this. Procedures that weren't followed to safely apprehend Anthony were not followed. But I do recall something of it. I only watched it once from the DA. I only watched the live version. I did not go back and rewatch because I just didn't want to, honestly. I'm not going to lie.
Yeah, I usually don't watch these videos of these police murders because I'm not 12 anymore, so I don't watch murder videos online.
Right. So
this one's important because
it was important, so I did watch it,
fatal.
but I didn't go back to rewatch. But I am almost certain the gun fell out of his hand. Did it fall out of his hand prior to him being shot behind the stall, or was that after he was shot? That I don't know. I know the gun came out of his hand.
That
But
I don't know.
I don't know if it, because there was still, it was still a scuffling. It fell out the other, so it was a kind of kangaroo pouch, hoodie type outfit, and it fell out the other end of that. But the officers couldn't see it, and they didn't see that happen. But I don't recall if that was. I mean, it was in 11 seconds. I mean, it happened very fast.
11 seconds from the time the officers went in there, and if they would have exercised patience, if they would have asked them to get his hands up first.
Yeah.
They didn't even try. They immediately started wrestling with this boy.
Stand up, face the other direction, hands to the wall, anything like that. Any number of actions to safely apprehend Anthony.
Yeah, I've seen people even defending the cops, being like, "Oh, what do you expect them to do?"
Oh, come on, you
Like,
saw
follow
our Facebook page.
Yeah. Well, those people didn't pay attention to anything. They're just like, "Oh, a black kid died. I don't give a shit."
I
Like,
hope
that's
everybody
literally
read
what
our
people-
podcast last week.
Yeah, thanks, commenters.
So just real quick, we it went, to people that would never listen to our show,
We're
and they
a
didn't.
East
But they
Tennessee
kept talking about how
leftist
our
podcast.
article was making assumptions or something. I'm like, you guys, it's a fucking podcast. Like,
Yeah, I love how they say that we're just a typical liberal podcast when half of what we talk shit about is on liberals, obviously.
Wait, did you even talk about why he had a gun? As a matter of fact, we did.
yes.
Did you listen?
Have a listen. I swear it's there. Okay, so we then saw the footage, and then we see this kind of masturbatory display by the DA talking about the...
She's so tired. She worked tirelessly
I hope
for
she never
9
fucking
days.
sleeps again.
It's your fucking job, bitch. You ran.
Well, it's usually pretty easy to run a libertarian town full of dipshits.
Yeah.
But, I mean, it was... So she went through, talking about, I guess, certain, law aspects, citing the Tennessee Code and everything regarding self-defense, and then, right...
Yeah, jerk off.
Masturbatory, and of course, saying that this was a justified shooting.
The community disagrees.
The community disagrees. I know there's a protest. There was one. Again, we record on Thursday. This is Thursday, April 22nd, and there was a protest yesterday, and another one scheduled tonight.
Where I'm expecting them to go all weekend.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. I'll
Hopefully
be out there.
go until there's actually some justice.
That's what I'm hoping for. I believe this weekend people are talking about coming into town, so this weekend maybe when it gets... And I just found out we have 30 Tennessee Highway Patrol agents in town for the protest, so... Last night, it everything remained peaceful, but the energy is up.
Right, okay.
There were protests, all week last week, but it lacked the energy that last night after we saw the body camera that everybody had. The crowd was much larger. But the police stayed away. The police, they didn't try to run anybody off. They didn't try to break up the protest. They let the protesters protest, and we had no incidences. Somebody waved a gun at us last night.
Really?
Yeah. But... We changed our direction, diffused the situation, and we went on.
Oh, wait, you know how to de-escalate?
Yeah, amazingly, yeah, we do better at that than...
I know we're going to throw some more names out, but a lot of the problem that we've been discussing with the police and their tactics is their lack of de-escalation.
Particularly with black folk, because
Yeah.
they know how to de-escalate when there's a white guy with an assault rifle.
Right.
It's clearly a racial divide in how they use their tactics. But, that's part of their training, because this is a systemic issue of the entire system, training them. These are thugs. Like I said, their whole training is, these are the enemy. Be scared. These are the enemy.
I think on one of John Oliver's special on police, he talked about in their training, there was, one agency they looked at, and, all their targets were, black people. And the white people were good. The black people were, it was blatant.
Yeah, black people pointing at, white women.
Right.
I was listening to a podcast, and the episode aired years ago, and I think it was on cognitive dissonance. And they was talking to a former police friend of his, a friend of his that was a former police officer, and that they are kind of conditioned to target them because of how, and I'm going to air quote here, more likely they are to have illegal weapons or drugs on them. And so it kind of creates this circle of, this systemic racism in that, and it just perpetuates the whole cycle of targeting that community because they, I guess, want to have a high success rate. There's going to be a lot of other white folks out there that are going to be illegally carrying, weapons.
Well, even drugs. It's there's been a study done that shows that white people use drugs at the same rate that black people do. So why do black people have higher drug charges? And I've brought this up to a racist, and the racist is white people are better at not getting caught.
Well, not only that, but,
they get policed less.
Well, no, not only that, but I think the mandatory minimums are racist as shit as well because of what drugs are categorized in what way versus, who was more likely to take these drugs, the black community, who's more likely to take these drugs, the white community, and can you guess which one has a lighter sentence?
Yeah, that's the crack and cocaine.
Exactly.
It's the same damn drug, but crack holds a higher penalty than cocaine.
Yeah, and it's blatantly racist.
Yeah.
And yet, I believe that still exists. I think that's still a thing.
Yep. Yeah.
Yeah, as I've been saying, the part of the cops' training is to work in a correctional facility, and because of the systematic racism, most of the people in there do end up being people of color. So that's part of their training process is to instill that racism. Like, wasn't one of the cops in this scuffle? Wasn't one of the cops people of color?
Two of them were.
Yeah.
Was it? I thought the Knoxville office. It was two. Okay.
So I think liberals or conservatives will say, well, they can't be racist. They were black and they were doing this, but. They're
conditioned just as well.
Part of their training is to condition them to feel more of a brotherhood and connection with police than they do with their community, which is why we call them class traitors. One of the reasons, at least.
Oh, and that obviously extends to the DA as part of their brotherhood with, no, I'm sorry, the police chief. That was like her primary concern after the shooting that. They supposedly thought originally was a school shooting.
Because that's how they tried to spin it.
Clearly, we know that they knew it wasn't from the get-go.
From the very beginning, they knew.
So
because they were slowly... It took them 22 minutes or so. Like, they were looking in one bathroom. They locked it. They were wandering around. They were looking at videos. So they were there for a long time. They were not looking for an active shooter or someone that they thought had a gun because they were taking their sweet-ass time.
Yeah, they were, shooting the shit in the office.
Yeah, they were. I'm sure that they were literally conspiring to plan what they were going to sell this as to the media, because that's what we saw when it broke. Blatantly lies to the media.
I said, absolutely.
The cop himself was like, "Oh, I took a bullet to save the school. I'm a hero." Like, they were trying to focus it.
Claybo fucking knew he shot him, because that gun went off well after they were on the ground. That was the dumbest thing ever. What kind of trigger discipline do you fucking have?
So, not only is he not getting charged, and I think it's multiple people, because Claybo isn't the one who initiated the struggle.
No.
And he's the one I actually think should be charged. He's the one who didn't follow a proper procedure and, first make sure there was nothing in his pockets before grabbing at him. That's what set everything off. Claybo...
They should all be charged, because that's what they would do to anybody else. If you were in a situation where this went wrong, they would charge you for just being with somebody that a situation happened.
But the initial officer who did not follow the typical steps they would take to arrest somebody, he set off a chain reaction, and as a result, someone died.
Well, where was the good cop to be like, hey, do your job right?
It was 11 seconds, though.
I mean, I'm just
saying.
It was
11. When you think of it, 11 seconds.
I think they're all culpable for not preventing that, to be like, hey, where's our procedure? I thought we had training. Did you skip that week? Oh, okay, I did too. I don't know.
But see, once they started wrestling with him and they got a view of the gun, at that point I do see, the officer, I don't believe him, but hypothetically, if it was me, and I actually saw a gun pointed to me, I'd be kind of freaked out. He was behind him, though.
Do you believe the story that he saw at a weird angle?
I just said I don't believe him.
No, hold on. I just want to cover this, because I was like, did he, though? And here's what happened. Briefly, and of course they showed still images that we can stare at for seconds, but a barrel of a gun inside the pocket as he was turning in a scuffle.
For 11 seconds from the time they went into the bathroom to the time he died, no, I don't think he saw that.
Everyone knows that wait is a famous battle cry for I'm going to attack. So he got nervous and he tried to stop that before anything started. Anthony showed no aggression or any plan of attacking. He was like, hold on a minute, let me get my hands out of this, or let me get this dangerous thing out of the way. And instead they were pushing him around.
From the get-go of the video, when we first see him, he's nervous about something. He's scared. He didn't even know at that time that cops were coming to the school to get him. He's pacing around. He's scared. Cops come into the bathroom. He was a scared boy, but he still got up and he walked towards them when they asked. He didn't resist, nothing. And then 11 fucking seconds later, he's dead.
Yeah, I don't know. They immediately just grabbed him. I know because I guess he had his hand in his pockets, which I know is kind of a no-go for them. You know,
we've learned that cops are very scared of black children.
They didn't even ask him to put his hands up first.
No, they didn't.
They didn't.
Yeah, no. Hands on your head.
If they did and he resisted, we'd be having another discussion right now.
I mean, they were there to apprehend him.
Asked for him to put his hands up.
Right.
They immediately started wrestling with him.
Right. So there were 4 of them, and they were there to apprehend him. So they were not just there to question. They were there. You don't send 4 officers to question a individual. They were there to apprehend him. So they should have, as a child, and yet, you know, they didn't follow any of the procedures to make sure that both Anthony and them were safe. They
didn't render aid, and they're not getting charged for the failure to render aid because of the fact that, well, the autopsy said he would have died anyway.
He probably would have.
It doesn't
shows
matter.
You how little empathy they had to him in the first place. The cops didn't
know in those moments that he would have died. They didn't
shot him
know
twice in the chest.
anything.
They're not doctors.
And they
shot
even
him twice in the chest.
No, it was the shoulder. It was the shoulder.
It was the went through the right chest area, went through the lung and heart. I believe
it was the trajectory. It was the trajectory of the bullet as it went through his body that caused the critical damage that ended in his death. So, but no, they weren't trying to render aid.
I mean,
what did the DA said was the cause of the problem?
Guns in schools.
Yeah.
I wanted to talk about that because I know you kind of want to rant about that.
When asked to address the upset members of the community, it was basically, well, you guys have to get the guns off the streets. They're your streets. You clean them up. She didn't say it verbatim like that, but that's essentially what she said.
It was like there's too many black kids with guns. Is essentially what she said is the core problem.
Yeah, that's part of why these cops are trained to look at, you know, there's a lot of black kids with guns. They're going to shoot you. You better watch out. You better shoot first, or you're going to be dead.
And I gotta say,
that's their police training. That is the police training.
They're putting out there that the black community isn't trying to address these communities or these situations at all, or this problem in their community. That's a bunch of bullshit. Like, I was out there Saturday because they had this youth march thing going on, and I showed up for it. They had this whole ass like block party thing going on where the kids had a stage. They were up there showing off their talent. They talked about they were going around passing out flyers and stuff for things to get the kids involved in. They're trying to get the kids like to learn gun safety, to cut back on the accidental shootings that they have. They're like, you know, we're going to address the guns in our community, but until then, these guns are in our community. Our kids are going to find them, and our kids need to know how to be safe with them so that we don't have to keep having accidental shootings. That cuts back on some of these shootings. But they're addressing it. They're paying attention. They don't want their fucking kids to die. You know, and for the media and fucking the DA to act like this community isn't trying to address the problem is infuriating, because they absolutely are.
Knoxville's like, once again, what's wrong with your community? We put 4 new breweries in there.
Right, like they're not putting in the resources. It's the community coming together to offer mental health services. It's the community that's trying to get all the things that they need for each other while our city sits back and jacks off. I don't know what the fuck they're doing.
I mean, this is part of racism, to cut your city up into good parts and bad parts. You know, you spend your money on propping up West Knoxville. You stop sending money down to that town, try to push all the poor people into a certain part of town, try to push all the minorities into a certain part of town, police the fuck out of that area to up your revenue. Like, Like I've said, the system isn't broken. The system is working how it's intended.
Yeah, I mean, this is repeated in not just Knoxville.
This is all
nationwide.
everywhere.
This is all over. And why is it always the damn East Side on a lot of cities?
I don't know.
Because I know there's several cities that I've known and been to that East Side has always been known as the bad
You
part of
usually
town.
hear East Side for things like that. I don't know.
Well, we did have one minor victory. On Tuesday, Chauvin was found guilty on all 3 charges, second-degree murder.
420.
Happy 420 indeed. So he was found guilty on second-degree murder. The lesser included offenses, third-degree murder, and second-degree manslaughter, I believe.
I wasn't expecting that. I can honestly say I actually expected him to get off on all 3 charges. I know a lot of people were expecting maybe the lesser one.
I was expecting a hung jury, honestly, just 1 or 2 lone racists. Or...
I expected just one juror to fuck it all up, and there
I
were
hope they
no
12
charges.
Angry Men that one racist in there.
So, but he is obviously, I think, just the exception to police accountability.
Yeah, people are trying to act like this is a new precedent, but time will tell.
Of course it is. I mean, every time I go to the comment section, why do I do this? But I do, and
It's old white men and old white women. That's what it is. We saw that on our own page once the conservatives
it
found
absolutely was.
I hope you guys are actually still listening.
We saw the demographics of
Reading.
who was.
Oh,
They're
okay.
reading.
Sorry.
They were reading the podcast, and we saw demographics, and the majority of the people that commented and reached were above 55.
Fucking boomers, man. I'm so glad.
Yeah, there's that they're saying this is a dangerous precedent. Now cops won't want to come out to come help and protect because they'll be too scared of being charged.
Good, yeah. I saw a meme that was like, conservatives, this is the end of policing as we know it. The next part is me. I doubt it, but I really appreciate your optimism,
Yeah, if this is making someone too scared to become a cop, then they shouldn't be a cop.
Well,
I think that's why they become a cop, so they can have power without accountability.
I think in the last year, the police force is probably actually changing and becoming worse because there were a lot of people in 2020, a lot of cops that stepped down from being cops. They didn't like that the public couldn't trust them. They didn't like the perception that they had. Well, then there's other people who are the aggressive, fuck all these liberal pussies type that are flocking towards being cops.
Yeah, I can name off the top of my head like 4 or 5 people that I personally know that started cop training and it was like, whoa, this is shitty. This is going to make me a bad person and left. That's a good cop. That's what a good cop does. Like, there is no such thing as a good cop. The good ones see how fucked up it is and then don't continue. There's no way to get through that program without being a piece of shit because that's the job.
I think it was in Nashville maybe when a protester asked the cop, like, how do you like your job now? And the cop responded, I hate it. I'm quitting tomorrow. Or tomorrow's my last day. Like, I remember in Louisville, there was a cop that looked like he was really fucking evaluating his life choices as we, like, were yelling and screaming at him from across the line. Like, we had, like, a lane of traffic between us or two.
Yeah, I'm sure
so it's not like we were in his face, but he seemed to, like, be really fucking questioning his life choices. And so those people, like...
Am I the baddie?
Yeah.
Yeah, so the majority of the comments that I've seen or opinions and views of people who are bootlicking police supporters is that the jurors only found him guilty because they were afraid that the city would erupt in violent protests or riots.
Well, Maxine Waters made a threat for violence, which she didn't actually. She said the protesters would not go away. And once again, 97% of protests last summer were nonviolent. They were peaceful protests. So, to say that the protesters would be out if there's not a conviction does not mean... It's not a threat of violence. But regardless of whether she did threaten violence or not, the jurors are not supposed to be watching the media or
they're supposed to be
discussing the. Well, they weren't sequestered.
They weren't sequestered. Okay, I thought
but
they would be.
still were not supposed to be discussing the trial with people, even their family, or watching the media. So therefore, they should, if they follow the rules, have absolutely no grounds.
I mean, there's zero chance they don't try to appeal.
They're going to,
but. Derek Chauvin's bail was revoked.
Yeah.
So he'll be sitting in jail throughout the entire appeal process. So fuck him.
That's, the thing with the Maxine Waters that they're all hopeful because the judge said, well, this may give you grounds, or it may give you something to appeal over. He said may, and they took it as, well, that's a definite. They can appeal now. That's not the case. He's definitely going to try. I think they're going to try. Well, the thing is they can't use that for an appeal, from my understanding, unless a juror comes out and says, well, I did see that and it influenced my thing. Because otherwise, the assumption as of now is the jurors were not supposed to be watching the media or discussing the case, so they would have no knowledge of her comments.
And immediately after Maxine's comments, our favorite Congresswoman, Marjorie Taylor Greene, called for her expulsion.
She's a dumb cunt.
For inciting a riot or inciting violence, despite circle jerking Trump when on the January 6th insurrection.
I mean, she knows it's not going to work.
Oh,
she has to know. She's just shit stirring. That's all she does.
That's all she does.
I'm glad that she's our stand-in for Trump now that Trump's been muted.
I think Ted Cruz came out and said some bullshit too, but fuck Ted Cruz.
I mean,
I'd almost rather deal with her than Trump because she has no power. She can't do fucking anything.
She doesn't have the charisma that Trump has. Trump is the picture perfect demagogue. That's why he
the only other person that I think enjoys being punchable as much as her is
Ben
fucking.
Shapiro?
No, well, I was thinking Caitlin Bennett.
No, because Ben Shapiro has a bigger voice.
But he's on the radio. He hides behind the radio. Caitlin Bennett goes to college campuses and harasses people.
I guess because Shapiro's a small itty bitty dude that knows he's going to get punched in the face one day.
I mean, Ted Cruz is very punchable too. Let's not forget that.
Yeah, there's a lot of that are punchable.
But so as I was saying earlier, he's the exception. Chauvin's the exception. A lot of these cops are protected by the laws and immunity.
I hope it has the cops shaking in their well-licked booties.
Oh, it does not. It's not going to.
I hope they second guess, should I pull my gun instead of my taser this time? I don't know.
Yeah, we didn't even get a chance to talk about Dante Wright.
No, that's too much shit to talk about. Like you said, there's probably since we started this podcast, I bet someone's been murdered by cops.
So
that's a good segue, actually.
We're discussing him being it's one person who is charged. In 2020, there were 1,128 officer-involved shootings.
I was about to ask you about this article.
And only 16 of those got charges brought up against them. Out of 1,128. So that's 0.1% of officers that were convicted. I'm sorry. No, I'm sorry. Even fewer resulted in conviction. So 0.1% were charged. Less than that actually were convicted for their...
So I wanted to segue into the article. It's probably the same article that I was thinking about. The number of how many days in 2020. Is that the one you have pulled up?
Yeah.
So tell us about that.
In 2020, there were only 18 days where the police didn't kill someone. And
that's fucked.
Yeah. And there were a few things here.
I think the article said it averaged 3 per day.
3 per day.
Of course, the people in our comment section, most of the people that are on the side
hero cops every fucking...
Yeah, they fear for their lives. They don't care. They're white old men that have never been scared of the cops in their life, and they don't really give a shit. That's what they're really trying to say, that they don't give a shit.
So more than 1,100
because they've never had to fear it themselves.
People were killed by the police in 2020, 28 of whom were black. Despite making up nearly 30% of police killings, black people only constitute 13% of the United States. and they found that
You said there's 28% of those? You said 28% of those?
28% were black.
Okay.
And then there were 3 times more, black people were 3 times more likely to be killed by an officer than a white person, and 1.3 times more likely to be unarmed than the white people.
I mean, I'm not surprised, are you?
No. In the first 106 days of 2021, police have already killed at least 268 people.
The most violent gang in America. That's what they are. They are a gang. Most of their day-to-day job, the good cops, are extortionists. That's the job of a cop. If they're not out there shooting people, they're extorting the public for money. That's a gang.
And it's because they don't. It's because they don't know as de-escalation tactics whatsoever.
What was it, like an hour after Chauvin was convicted? That what was her name? The 16-year-old Micaiah Bryant.
It's either Makia or Micaiah Bryant in Columbus.
Yes, 16-year-old girl. Which she did have a knife. Apparently, like you can't see something in her hand. She was lunging at something. The thing in this situation is the officer already had his gun drawn over 2 people fighting. If he didn't have his gun drawn, he could have easily grabbed this 16-year-old and held her hands down at the side so she couldn't hurt anyone. He could have taken so many other measures besides shooting to kill her. 16 years old.
4 shots? Was
4
it?
shots.
Yeah, drawing a weapon is an escalation.
Before we continue on with this, because I want to talk about some fuckery that happened by the police in Columbus afterwards. We didn't get to talk about it last week. I do want to kind of mention it because of how dangerous it is to kind of be pulled over by police. And I was sad we didn't get to talk about it last week because we were so focused on Anthony Thompson Jr., but I want to talk about... I do want to talk about Lieutenant Caron Nazario. This is the gentleman that was pulled over for not having a license plate, and he had apparently, according to the reports, though, he had the window tag on the back that was supposed to be visible.
Right.
They approached him, guns drawn, already, and they're telling him to put his hands out the window.
They said they approached gun drawn because they thought he was trying to evade arrest, although he slowed down. He turned his blinker on to let them know that he was aware they were there, and he pulled into a lit gas station.
Right.
And I've seen people in the comment sections being like, "That's not what you're supposed to do. You're supposed to pull over immediately." Now, I remember when I lived in Nashville, we had somebody that was going around like small town, the smaller roads there, back roads that weren't well lit. And they were using dash lights in their car to pull people over, women who were traveling alone over. And he was raping these women. I remember very fucking clearly on the news that Metro Nashville Police Department advises anyone on roads that are not well lit to put on your flashers so that the officer, to acknowledge the officer and let him know that you see them, and wait to pull over until you are in a well-lit place. Funny, as I had a friend who lived in Georgia. My kid was about 6 to 8 months old at the time. I would always travel the back roads between her place and my place, and I was out on Dalton Highway. I saw a car pass me, and it came up behind me, and I wasn't speeding. It turned on the fucking lights. I'm on a road with fucking nothing on it. So I remembered that news thing, and I turned on my flashers and waited until I got to something well lit. About the time that I saw a gas station with lights on, The guy turned around and went off the other way.
Really?
I don't know. Like, another car had passed. I don't know if it was a real cop and that car was actually speeding. I don't know what was going on, but I was thankful for that. And to this day, I don't care who's with me. If a cop is pulling me over on a dark road, I'm going to turn my flashers on and wait till I get into a well-lit area where there are other people.
Right. Okay, so they approach him, guns drawn, and they immediately yell for him to order him to put his hands outside the vehicle, and he immediately complies. Seconds later, guns still drawn, they tell him they want him out of the car now. He has his seatbelt on. He can't do that. So they're giving him now conflicting commands.
Daniel Schaefer.
If he was to reach back into the vehicle with a hand, he is no longer complying with their initial to release the seatbelt. And he's got to imagine, like, if I put my hands in here, I'm getting shot, right? And so they approach, and then what does he say? He's telling him, like, he doesn't even know why he's being pulled over at this point,
right?
Still yet, but they're immediately yelling these commands, and then they're yelling at him to get out of the vehicle. And he's trying to just like, why are you pulling me over, so on and so forth. And he's like, I'm honestly scared to get out. And what does he fucking say? Yeah,
you should be.
You should be. And something about you're about to ride the lightning, I think they said as well. This is a uniform. He was in uniform, was he not?
Yeah,
he was in uniform. He was complying,
duty.
Except for getting out of the vehicle because he was having his arms outside of the vehicle, could not release his seatbelt, didn't know why he was being pulled over. And they're giving him conflicting reports. And then they just start macing him in the face with his dog in the back.
Yes.
And, like, it was just... No, those cops did get fired.
Oh, no, not fired.
Only after publicity came about.
Oh, of course.
Oh, no, they might have to move to a different precinct. That'll erase their whole records.
Probably. It was just... I hated that I couldn't talk about it last week, but I know it's, like, old news now, but it was just... Such a shitty situation. This kid, I can imagine he is fearful for his life.
Right.
And then he gets maced in the face. Come on, ride the lightning. What kind of bullshit is that?
They're fucking power tripping.
Yeah, that's why they signed up for the job, so they can kill some innocent people. He's like, this is the night. I'm going to get my star tonight.
I made a comment on KPD's page today, and somebody replied, well, why don't you try to do something about it? You could become a police officer.
I'd like to see you try.
I'm not a power trip I'm not a fucking pig who, like, power trips and needs authority over other people in order to feel better about myself. Why the fuck would I be a cop? Because those are the only fucking people who seem to do it.
Yeah, if you seriously care about your community and want to serve it, that is not the way to do it.
Right, so that was Lieutenant Caron. And going back to Columbus, what was it, a day or two after Makia was killed in Columbus, there was a nice little joyride.
It was the next day.
It was the next day? So what happened? What happened there?
I guess it was the police copters or whatever flying through the air. The route they took, they made sure to spell out CPD in their route. Like, just fucking taunting people.
But according to the tweet that I saw, they overlaid their GPS route, over the demographic of the city, and it was a predominantly black area.
Oh, those fucking pieces of shit! I didn't know that part.
Oh yeah, no, they were over the most predominantly black area where they spelled the CPD at on their little joyride, as a taunting fuck you to the community. I mean, I don't know what time or at what height.
It doesn't fucking matter. It really doesn't.
No, I mean,
it's
but
the point of the matter.
It was intentional.
Yeah.
I mean, at the cost of taxpayer money, by the way. I mean, helicopter maintenance, fuel, not cheap.
I mean, any KPD.
Of course, we have a fucking
thing.
tank in Knoxville. Jesus Christ.
Yeah, I just posted that. Our fucking liberal ass mayor hanging out of a tank.
I think that tank was out again today.
Yeah, I bet. You know, fucking Cannon. She is a fucking cunt. You know, I have a friend who actually lived in her house.
Wait,
like,
what?
rented out her upstairs room.
Oh, great.
She Airbnb'd it or what?
No, like she had rented out her attic, basically.
Oh, okay.
But I know exactly where she lives. I know her house, and it's crawling with homeless people. She can't keep Like, she can't even fix the problem in her own neighborhood. Maybe that's why she has such a problem against it and likes to bulldoze homeless camps.
So you said there were like 3 kids that died. I know we had Derek, we had
In
Anthony.
a 1 week time period, we had Adam Toledo.
That was the 13-year-old.
Micaiah Bryant, the 16-year-old, and Anthony Thompson Jr., 17 years old.
I know we briefly mentioned it last week, but I want to talk about the Toledo video because I don't know that I saw it. Did you see the weapon on him in his hand in the time that the gun went off that he was fired upon?
I only saw one video, and somebody told me there was a second video. I still haven't found the second video, but they said it looked like he threw something behind the fence. I haven't seen it yet. I can't say, yes, I've seen this, because I haven't. But even if he threw a gun, like he was running, if he threw the gun this way and he put his hands up.
It was less than a second. That's all I know.
Right,
It was less than a second between the gun was fired.
So the other video apparently showed him, the cop saying, empty your hands, put it down. He threw it behind a fence and immediately turned around, put his hands up. He didn't even have his hands all the way open before the cop opened fired on him and killed him.
Okay, so we didn't actually have the information from the second video because I know you said you couldn't find it.
Mm-hmm.
While we do have just the 3 hosts, we do have Stephanie here who kind of acts as our producer, listens to us, and provides us information throughout the show. She did provide that information to us that he threw this weapon. So I just wanted to, so it didn't because you had mentioned you hadn't seen the video, so I don't want to confuse our audience on how we suddenly came about that information. So.
Yeah, well, we get additional information here and there.
we need help sometimes. We need a Googler and insight, or just someone who just happens to have the information. So we really appreciate the work that Stephanie does.
But yeah, this 13-year-old boy, his hands were empty at the time he was shot.
It's just so fast. He shot so damn fast.
11 seconds.
You're right.
It was 11 seconds, both with Anthony Thompson Jr. and Micaiah Bryant.
And children's lives are being ended.
Children's lives, yes. These are 16, 17, 13-year-olds. Kids. I went to go see a friend of mine.
In a week's time?
Yeah. Went to go see a friend of mine this week, and her kid's black. He's 14 years old, 5'11". He's a big old boy. The sweetest boy I know. Like, every time he sees me, he gives me a hug. He's real shy. He's intelligent. He just wants to play his video games, and he goes to school, and he tries his best at school. And his mom is just like, I'm terrified. I'm terrified. Look how big he is. He looks like a grown man. What's going to happen if he goes walking down the street one day? You know, it's we hear these stories all the time. And, yes, the 3 kids that were shot last week, all of them had a weapon at some point in time. But how many kids have been killed by police that didn't even have a weapon?
What was it, Tamir Rice?
Tamir Rice. There's so many. I'm having a hard time keeping up with the names.
It's getting more and more difficult.
Was his name Elijah last year?
I'm going to be honest with you. There was so much shit that happened, not only in 2020, but with cops killing.
I think it was Elijah McClain, maybe?
Yeah, the cops aren't really killing more people. It's just being reported on more. As we saw in Knoxville, they wanted to sweep this under the rug. They've been sweeping this under the rug for the last. It
was the outcry that I think
for the last 100 years they've been sweeping it under the rug. Before civil rights movement. Before that, you're like, no body cams, no accountability, more racist people. Like, this is not something new that's just happening.
Something I forgot to mention earlier, talking about Lieutenant Caron Nazario, is that he was related to Eric Gardner.
Who was?
The officer I was talking about earlier, the Lieutenant Caron Nazario, he was related to Eric Gardner. And that was that 2018? Or was that earlier?
Oh.
This is a conservative sickness.
It just keeps happening.
Yeah.
It just keeps happening.
Just to clarify, Elijah McClain was 23. I thought he was younger than that, but he was unarmed.
Oh, okay.
And
23 is not exactly old or, having a full life
and
either.
he looks really fucking young. I would have, if I just saw his picture, I would have thought he was 17, 18 years old.
And also a brief correction. So it was Eric Gardner was 2014.
Yeah, I was thinking it was a little bit further back.
Yeah, it's just. I know. This show has just been for the last 2 weeks. Just fuck cops, but they just keep.
Do you think we're going to go a week before next time without more cop shit? No, we're going to be talking about it next week too.
I always thought it would just. I had envisioned that we would have just a small segment of hey, this is some fuckery, but it's just so much lately that it's just overwhelming our newsfeed with just because nothing else is dominating.
Nothing happened since last year, since the protests. Like, did anything actually come out of that? No.
No,
did anything
look
change?
at the last week. Clearly nothing is. Okay, we got a fucking murder conviction. But nothing
no
is
fundamental
changing.
laws
It's
change.
not doing
no
anything.
change in police reform. There's no police reform.
But mandatory minimums on that and the sentencing guidelines on Derek Chauvin, according to Stephanie, from what she heard, is that he's going to be in prison for 8.5 years.
Well, I hope he gets killed or worse.
Damn it, Sam! I told you not to say that.
I'm going to say it. I don't give a shit.
I don't hope he gets killed. What I hope is
no
that
reform for him.
Somebody kneels on his neck repeatedly, over and over again, long enough for him to fucking fear for his life, and then let him up. And then an hour later, do it
every
again.
day for the 8 years.
Every day, every
Can be
fucking day.
New
Bring
type
his
of
life
waterboarding
right
with a
there.
knee.
Let
Ow.
him experience that fear.
Ow!
Yes.
I can only get so hard.
I mean, I think we both posted something this week of we want to change the prison reform system, but
That's some autoerotic asphyxiation level porn right there.
Our police are like setting up
Knee-log me,
extra.
daddy.
Our police are setting up extra cameras right now around the police department.
Oh,
yeah,
in
they're
preparation
planning
for
on
tonight's
doing
protest.
something. The way that Knoxville police work is they try to control the narrative. They will try to start something and then try to spin it a different way. I have enough
if they're
experience with them to know
smart,
that's what they're doing.
they would handle it the way they did yesterday and
But they're
stay
not.
the
They want
fuck
to
away.
start something. They want to try to get the conservative base on
They
their
did
side.
the
and they're
same
going to
thing
try to
last
fake
year
it.
with George Floyd. The first night of protest, they stayed the fuck away. The second night of protest, that's when they came out.
Oh, did
because
they
they hoped with the first protest that everybody would come get their anger out and then go back inside. Them not being there resulted in a peaceful protest.
That's what I was talking about earlier. I'm going to cut you off real quick because
Okay.
that's exactly what fucking pissed me off last year and made me more fuck 12 harder than I've ever been is because I saw peaceful ass shit until cops started just drive-by macing people in the fucking crowd. Drive-by. They were in their car spraying fucking mace into protesters' faces just as they're driving by. I was like, fuck you guys.
Yeah.
So proceed, sorry.
But yeah, it's they antagonize. Like our first day of protest last year, it was a bigger protest and the cops stayed away. The next night, and it was mostly white people, that protest. The next night, it was mostly a crowd of black people. And they showed up and they were pepper spraying people. The next night, again, mostly black people, and they followed us around with their fucking, I don't even know what that, it wasn't a tank, but it was some kind of armored vehicle.
Yeah, the mayor's tank. The mayor's steed.
It was the mayor's tank.
Her epic mount that she won for becoming mayor.
They followed,
my nerdism is coming out from that.
followed all the protesters around in that, and they were a lot more aggressive, and shit went down that night.
Yeah.
It's, when the cops stay the fuck away, nothing happens. It's
the
the
Knoxville
cops
cop,
that...
the Knoxville mayor, the Knoxville DA, they're all extremely racist, and that's what dictates the way that they govern, the way that they police. It's very clear that Knoxville's like this. You can see.
No, it's not just Knoxville.
Oh,
Yeah, it's
that's
not,
where I
but
live.
it's-
But it's
That's
where we live.
That's
right?
where I live.
It's what we're bitching
we
about.
know our experiences with the KPD, and it's not different than anywhere else. But there's a lot of people, especially liberals, have been fucking railing on
Everyone
them
can
this
see
week.
your face when you said that.
I think I heard it in their voice. I'm sure it came through.
Eyes roll back in my
Your
head.
eyes rolled back so hard you can feel it in your throat.
But I keep hearing them all last year. Well, KPD isn't bad. We don't have these issues here. 12 fucking people. No, I'm sorry. 24 people in the last 10 years have been shot at by the police here. 12 of those were fatal hits. So more than one person a year are dying from the police here on average.
And we're not a
And
huge
that's-
population either.
No, and that's just the people who die. So it averages at least twice a year. Miraculously in 2020, because everybody was hidden away, we did not have any police shootings.
Really?
So take that year away. When it comes out to more than 2 people a year, our police force shoot at.
So before we wrap up, I do want to discuss this outrageous abortion bill that just quickly passed the House and the Senate in the state of Tennessee. And this bill would require that any surgical abortions, that the fetuses be either buried or cremated at the expense of either the clinic or the woman. And it's just another shame bill.
It is, and it makes it harder when you...
It's going to increase the cost, I'm sure.
You know, and low-income people, they need access to abortion. If you're having a hard time eating yourself, and you have this being growing inside you that you know is another mouth to feed, but then you're thinking of, well, I need to pay for the abortion. Well, then I have to pay for the funeral. I have to pay for, like that is going to be a deterrent for some. I'm hoping that places like Planned Parenthood and some of these others will pick up the cost for.
Well, so the clinic, it would be either the clinic or the woman would have to do so. Another thing that kind of angers me is that there's nothing in there that carves out exceptions for rape or incest regarding that. So you would have to.
They don't care anyways. I mean, my take on abortion, like I've always been saying about everything, there's a step higher than this. Part of the reason they target abortion is because it only affects lower income people. If you're rich and need an abortion, you can get it cleaned up really easily. The money doesn't even affect you. Nobody knows. But if you're low income, can't struggle out of poverty, now you're forced to have a kid, what keeps you in poverty. It's part of the capitalist system to keep the underclass from actually gaining an advantage.
Yeah.
That's the main purpose of anti-abortion laws.
I mean,
Control
I won't
women
argue with
and
that.
control the lower class. Let's talk about it the way that it actually is. Let's stop pretending they give a shit about anything. The people, the voters that say that it's a religion, they're the upper class's pawns in this. So I've been, as I was saying to Dustin before this, nothing will change until we're on the streets over these abortion bills as anything else.
Well, they can call it religion, but religion is just another way to keep the poor down.
Yeah, and it's already more expensive for them because they've instituted a 2-day waiting period. So not only do they have to take 1 day off, but now 2 days off of their work.
It's important that
They
we
have to have
start
transportation
making
to
people
get there.
realize that anti-abortion laws are a form of class warfare.
Yeah, and so what Tennessee is doing, I mean, they introduced this, and Governor Bill Lee basically ran on anti-abortion. So he's most likely going to sign this into law. There's already his last one. It's already being challenged.
I was going to say, have you seen yet if ACLU or any of the other civil liberty organizations are trying to...
So here's what happened in 2019. The Supreme Court already upheld a similar law in Indiana. So
Yeah,
this will
exactly. That's why we need to be in the streets. We can't respect the Supreme Court anymore.
They're
we
going
need to do it ourselves.
Right, they're slowly chipping away at taking away
Roe versus
women's
Wade.
rights.
Until people get as pissed off about this, about like people in the streets now over police brutality, it's still not enough for that issue. But people need to be in the
the
streets
liberal
over this.
women will get out on the streets for fucking abortion stuff. I have no doubt that when it comes to issues that affect liberal white women, that there won't be protest.
You know what?
Well, you know how liberal white women protest. They don't do it in any way that affects anything.
So, what wasn't mentioned is that this is brought up because it's for the dignity of the life, of the unborn life.
Exactly, trying to frame it as if it is a fucking life, which is scientifically unproven.
Yeah, fuck that.
Based on their fucking religion.
Guess what happens way fucking more than abortions by far? Miscarriages.
Yeah.
Do you have to scoop that out and bury that shit too? I mean, they don't. It's such a bullshit law. It has nothing to do with anything.
Burn it down.
It has nothing to do with what they're framing it as.
For this.
God is
People
the
are-
ultimate
people are sitting
abortionist.
back.
God is, yes. I had mentioned, I talk about that a lot, is that a lot of pregnancies end in miscarriage before the woman even knows they're pregnant. And so if God is in fact control of everything, he is the most
But it's
prolific
up to him to
abortionist.
do it, because he can do anything and do no wrong, so it doesn't matter.
What, so
Moot point.
is that a new angel? Is that what happens? Like God needs new
God
angels?
needs a new angel, little baby, little fetus angels,
Little fetus angels.
little
I feel like there's
three-cell cluster angels.
There's like a beautiful pond filled with like swimming
Angels
fetuses.
pretty much look like a cell cluster anyways, biblically, so...
Which is never mentioned in the Bible whatsoever, abortions or anything like that, by the
Yeah,
way.
exactly, because it's a tool
No,
to control the lower
There's
class.
like a
Oh, is-
potion or something but
They
it's
talk
not
about
a bad
abortions
thing.
as a thing that happens, but they never condemn it in the Bible.
Yeah, they talk about a something you can drink that'll end in a pregnancy, but it's nothing that's
It didn't
condemned
happen
in
until
it.
the early 1900s when they were like, cluster of cells equal a life, and the whole connection is you can't kill, so they have to prove that it's a person. And now it's all fucking religion, because science is like, no, that's not it. But then Christians are like, but my sperm has a soul or something. I don't fucking know. Fuck them. It's Christian
Do you know
fascism.
how many souls go down my drain and stuff? I'm just kidding.
Well, hopefully you'll fix that in a few weeks.
I'll bury them, Sam. I'll
Yeah.
bury them or cremate them.
Yeah, I only jerk off into a hole in my backyard, too.
You have a designated spot too?
Well, I actually go with the cremation route and do it right into a bonfire. You can hear it sizzle.
Hey, I've done that before too, but I don't have sperm.
I know. I was like, damn, Sam, couldn't you wait till I was gone? All right, I want to thank you all for joining us again for Apostates on the Fringe. This is episode 12. As always, you can find us on social media. We're on Facebook and on Twitter. If you'd like links to the articles or contact the show, visit us on apostatepod.com. Please leave us a 5-star review everywhere you can and share out the show, and we will see you all next week.
Go masturbate.
Into a fire.
Into a fire.
NPR voice.
I love NPR voice.
Thank you all very much.
Apostates on the Fringe. Apostates on the Fringe.
The views and opinions of the hosts of Apostates on the Fringe do not represent the views and opinions of the Atheist Society of Knoxville. For links to all our musical contributors, go to apostatepod.com and check the About Us page. A big thank you to Michael Scott Arden, who allows the show to use his full catalog.